Yes, the stream's now started, Chair.
Thank you, Al. The first item is apologies for absence. Have we received any in advance?
Yes, Chair, we received apologies from Councillor W. Jones, who will be substituted by Councillor N. Baker, Councillor P. Elliott, who will be substituted by Councillor S. Clough, and Councillor M. Foster, who will be substituted by Councillor C. Renwick. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alan. Are there any other apologies from the floor? No.
None received, Chair.
The second item is declaration of interest. Members are requested to declare the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interest and or other interest not already on their register of interests in any item on the agenda and withdraw from the meeting at the appropriate time. Do any members have an interest to declare?
Councillor Cheetham, Chair.
Councillor Cheetham.
Thank you, Chair. My microphone switched on. Item 5 in Dronfield is in my ward, so I intend to, I've made a written submission, but I intend to leave the meeting and not take part in any voting for that application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cheetham. Our third item on the agenda is declarations of predetermination. Any members who cannot determine an application solely on the information presented to the committee at the meeting today is asked to declare they are predetermined on that item on the agenda and to withdraw from the meeting at the appropriate time. Do any members have any predetermination on the agenda to declare? No, thank you. Item 4. We now have the minutes of our meeting held on Tuesday the 18th of June 2024. Are we happy that they are a correct record and can we agree them by acclamation? Do we have a mover and a seconder? Thank you.
I'll second, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Can I just take a quick show of hands on that, please? Thank you, members, as they're approved. Right, colleagues, that brings us to the main business for the meeting, our application. Before we start, I would like the clerk to explain, for the benefit of members, speakers and those watching on YouTube, how we will deal with them.
Thank you, Chair. Before setting out the procedure for considering the business this afternoon, just to remind members again that if you wish to speak, you only need to press your button on your microphone once, and that this will be activated when it is your turn to speak and then turned off for you. In terms of the procedure, the Chair will introduce the application, then ask the planning officers to deliver a brief presentation on the application to members, and to highlight any late representations that have been received. The late representations report has been published on the Council's website and hard copies have been circulated to you. After this, the Chair will ask any speakers to address the meeting. There are 10 speakers today. They will each have 3 minutes to put forward their views. There will be a reminder given by the clerk when 30 seconds remain. At the end of the 3 minutes, members of the committee will have an opportunity to ask the questions, if necessary, in order to clarify any points that they have made. After the speaker has addressed the committee and answered any questions, then they will be allowed to remain in the meeting, but they will not be allowed to participate further from this point. The Chair will open up the meeting to questions to officers, a debate by the committee, and a determination on the application by a vote. The votes will be taken using the voting facility on your microphones. Finally, members, just a reminder that this meeting is being live streamed and that a recording will be placed on the Council's website. Please note that others may choose to copy this recording. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alan. Right, let's move on to our first application, item 5 on the agenda, NED/23/009/32/FL. Planning application for residential development of 132 dwellings. In line with our normal practices, I am going to ask the planning officer to give a brief presentation showing any photos and plans of the site. I will allow the officers to complete their presentation. Consequently, members, unless you have a point of order that you feel you cannot wait, could you please reserve these or any other questions about the process until the end? So I'll now hand over to Kerry Allen, our officer who's been in charge of this application.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to refer members to the late representations for this item that were sent out yesterday afternoon. This application seeks full planning permission for a residential development of 132 dwellings, including highways, landscaping and the associated works. Just waiting for the presentation. The site is located within the settlement development limits for Dronfield and is an allocated site, DR1, within the North East Derbyshire local plan. The southern section of the allocation does not form part of the application site. The full allocation is shown at figure 3 in the officer's report. The land to the north of Chesterfield Road, where the biodiversity enhancements are proposed, and to the east of the allocation, where the drainage tank is proposed, these fall outside the settlement development limits and are within open countryside in the North East Derbyshire green belt. The aerial photograph shows the application site highlighted in yellow and the surrounding area. Vehicular access is taken from a single point of access on Chesterfield Road, and then access to the pumping station is also proposed. 2 footpath links are proposed within the site to connect to the existing public right-of-way. This is a zoomed in view of the application site. Southfield Drive and Southfield Mount adjoin the site to the west, Burns Drive to the south, and the wastewater treatment works are to the north of the site. This is the site location plan, which shows the extent of the application site outlined in red. The area edged in blue is land within the applicant's ownership, adjoining the site. This is the site layout plan. And these are some visuals provided by the applicant to show the 1 and 2 bed apartments fronting onto Chesterfield Road. The picture at the bottom is from within the site, looking at the rear of the apartment blocks. This is an example 3 bed house type, an example 4 bed house type, and the proposed 1 bed apartment elevations. And then this just goes on to show some photos. So this is a view from Chesterfield Road where the access is proposed. And this is a view from Chesterfield Road looking southeast across the site. This is a view of the pumping station location, and you can just see the entrance to the footpath on the left-hand side of the photo through the stile in the wall. This is a view from Chesterfield Road. We're looking towards the site entering Dronfield. This is a view across the site. The houses visible in the distance is Southfield Mount. And this is one of the terraces on the rear of the properties on Burns Drive, which looks into the application site. The site is an allocated site within the local plan and is located in the urban area of Dronfield, so its sensitive development would accord with planning policies. However, for the reasons set out in the officer's report relating to the overall design, greenbelt compensatory measures required by local plan policy LC1 and impact on future occupiers, officers are recommending that the application be refused.
Thank you. Right, members. We now have 6 members. Six speakers on this application. The first being Councillor William Jones. Councillor Jones, you will have 3 minutes to speak. And if you can remain in position in case any members have any questions for you after that. Okay, thank you. So 3 minutes when you're ready. Thank you.
It is important to note that the concerns do not relate to the development of the site. It is in relation to the overall design of the development. My role as District Ward Councillor for Dronfield South is to bring these concerns to the committee. We are in complete agreement with the report to committee and its recommendations. We congratulate the Planning Officer on the depth and breadth of the report. There are, however, 4 areas of the report which do not fully reflect the depth of concern of the residents. Firstly, the approach to the design of the development overall is very naive. This is evidenced by the independent review carried out by PJA on behalf of NEDDC. 87% of the review points identified by PJA are classed as red/amber, meaning that either additional information is required or comments have been largely ignored. This requires considerable further work to be undertaken by the developer. Secondly, the current proposal for the gateway to Dronfield and the provision of affordable housing results in a naive and brutal frontage to the A61. It does not provide an appropriate mix and type of affordable housing, and it requires a more sensitive design approach. Thirdly, there have been long-running discussions with Yorkshire Water over the ongoing odour effects from the wastewater treatment works. This predates the 2018-19 local plan inspection, when it was stated to have been resolved. The odour became more prevalent post-2020 when the new wastewater treatment works was commissioned. The EHO objects to the site being developed for residential use, and the developer has declined to carry out a more detailed survey. The odour issue has not been resolved. Fourthly, it is proposed that foul and surface water is managed by off-site disposal routes to existing sewers. This does not protect against downstream off-site flooding. Policy SDC 11, paragraph F of the local plan states that development will not be permitted unless it incorporates a sustainable drainage system. These 4 areas are perceived to have not been fully explored in the report to committee and needs to be considered further in future resubmissions. In conclusion, we urge the committee to support the recommendation and refuse the current application. Thank you. I will be pleased to take any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Do any members have any questions for Councillor Jones? No, if you'd like to retake your seat. Councillor Alex Dale next. Would you like to use the table?
The table better, yeah?
Yes, please. Right, when you're ready, Alex.
Thank you, Chair. I strongly endorse the recommendations of the Planning Officer to refuse the application today. While the site is located in the local plan, North East Derbyshire deserves the very best development, attractive, respectful and in keeping with the semi-rural character of our area. What we have before us today is frankly the opposite. It's an ugly, ill-thought-through development on a main gateway into the town and completely out of character with the rest of Dronfield. Corners appear to have been cut at every opportunity in order to maximise profits. For a number of years, and despite many representations and meetings with relevant agencies, local residents have suffered with odour nuisance from the Dronfield wastewater treatment works just over the road from the site. However, the applicant has sought to diminish and belittle these concerns, only bothering to carry out a 1-hour sniff test on a cool spring day with the wind in a different direction, which environmental health officers have advised is a totally inadequate basis on which to form a view. These odour issues won't just affect existing residents, but also the saleability of the properties they are seeking to build, every single one of which will be within the 400-metre advisory cordon sanitaire around the sewage works, where development is not recommended. It would have been in the developer's own best interest to have worked with Yorkshire Water to tackle the problem, but they've simply avoided it. It's also noteworthy that the local lead flooding authority originally recommended an objection on the basis that the application had not considered any sustainable drainage solutions as required by the MPPF. The planning officer too rightly highlights the inadequacies of the strategy proposed by the applicant, who has completely failed to demonstrate why a proper SUD scheme would not be appropriate in this case, particularly when a recent application in neighbouring Unston proved that it is eminently possible on a hillside location of a similar gradient. While very technical in nature, these issues can have catastrophic impacts on the real-life experiences of local people. Unston Village in my ward suffered significant surface water flooding in 2019 at a natural low point in the valley, where water is funnelled from the surrounding landscape just a stone's throw from this site. But it wasn't just residents who were flooded in 2019. The charitable Drone Valley Brewery was struck by around 1 metre of river flooding from the Drone at the same time, caused by a surge from heavy rainfall onto Dronfield's mostly combined sewer network and the resultant discharges into the river from the just upstream sewage works. As you can imagine, the clean-up was awful and the damage could have easily caused the brewery to close. We all know that 1 in 100 rainfall events now seem to be occurring every few years, and we have a duty to protect lives and livelihoods from flooding. We must demand the very best from new development in North East Derbyshire, and that means sustainable drainage solutions which attenuate water flows as well as, or even better, than existing green fields. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Dale. Do any members have any questions on the points raised by the Speaker? No, if you'd like to retake your seat, thank you. The next speaker is an objector to the application, Stephen Allett. If you'd like to come up and take your seat, please. You have 3 minutes when you're ready. If you can just press the right-hand button on the microphone.
Southfield Residents Group, SRG, agree with the Planning Office, statutory consultees and cross-party ward members. They report 66 resident objection comments, including those of SRG. Considering our 37 counter-signatories, the true figure is significantly higher. This clearly demonstrates the local feeling. We fully support sustainable and well-designed development. It is something Dronfield needs. The PGAA report shows, as William has said, that the latest plans either ignore or fail to provide sufficient information on around 87% of the concerned areas. This demonstrates just how far from good design this application is. The local and neighbourhood plans clearly state that any development of this site needs to be carefully designed and must contribute to widespread infrastructure improvement. The submission fails in these regards. SRG urged the committee to demand very detailed technical plans covering all design elements rather than consider any condition-based approval. Any decision today counter to the recommendations must be immediately detailed with respect to the MPPF or local plan in line with probity requirements. I'd like to highlight 2 additional issues to these reports. The developers state that a 38-metre privacy distance for new houses to houses on Burns Drive is insufficient with which to guarantee amenity. The developer doesn't appear to concern themselves with homes on Southfield Mount, which were initially ignored on plans, but are excavated into the hillside. The ground floor entry levels of these buildings, some 2 stories below that of the ground floor of the proposed properties. The developer only considers the privacy of new residents and not that of existing residents. They must apply consistent approaches to amenity through larger privacy distance or excavate the proposed properties into the hillside as Southfield Mount has been. On protected flora, the hedgerow to the south of the site is protected under the Hedgerows Act 1997. Some trees around the borders are also protected by TPO. The developer proposes significant civils work, cut and fill, excavation and pipework trenching in and around these areas. Damage is inevitable and is prosecutable by law. We are duty bound to prevent any work with the potential to cause harm to these protected assets, and as such, development of these areas should be eliminated and any drainage systems relocated from the greenbelt, eliminating the need to traverse the protected hedgerow. The conditions of the local plan are that the remaining greenbelt must be enhanced by this development. It is hard to see how burying a large rainwater tank and associated infrastructure could ever be considered an enhancement. These are just two of many issues in addition to those comprehensively covered in the Planning Officer's report. The proposal represents poor design indicative of a lack of understanding of the local context and lack of community engagement. We propose a thorough redesign of the entire housing and infrastructure plan to improve the quality of the scheme. We urge you to trust in your experts' recommendations, demand better design, and ensure this proposal is appropriately scrutinised.
Thank you, Mr. Hallett. Sorry, has any members got any questions for Mr. Hallett? No? No, if you'd like to retake your seat, thanks. Right, the next speaker on this application is Mr. Hanran.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. You'll have 3 minutes when you're ready. Thank you.
This location presents several significant challenges. The developer has not addressed some of these at all. And regarding others, their proposals are cheap, amateurish, and woefully inadequate. The planning officer has highlighted many of these inadequacies in her report and has rightly recommended refusal of the application as it currently stands. The application contravenes several policies of the local plan, drafted and approved by both the previous Conservative and Labour administrations of NEDDC. It's your local plan. Let's look at it. Policy SS11. The application for this housing estate closes the settlement gap between the distinct communities of Dronfield and Unston. The policy states development proposals will only be permitted where they do not erode existing settlement separation and identity. These are green fields and the hay meadows. They're not grey areas recommended by the current government. But I want to link this with policy ID2. As I said, some of the measures the developers suggested are totally inadequate. They've not put a proper drainage system in, but they've put a completely inadequate means of addressing this issue by siting a Carlo tank in a field that is still designated Greenbelt, extending the development towards Unston in the Greenbelt. That's completely unacceptable, and it's an outrage. Policy SS1 states sustainable development will protect and enhance the quality and diversity of the landscapes, the wider countryside, ecological and biodiversity assets. This development would clearly diminish or harm these aspects and assets. Policy SD3 deals with the landscape character and states that development only permitted where they wouldn't cause significant harm to the landscape. This application would have a huge impact due to its prominence in the landscape and also the fact it constitutes the gateway to Dronfield. It's recommended housing isn't sited within 400 metres of sewage works. This estate would be within that limit, all of it within that limit. There's already an issue with the sickening stench from the sewage works. The developer has very kindly placed the affordable housing closest to the sewage works in one horrendously ugly, brutal block. Flooding in Unston's already had a major impact, as you've heard. This won't be able to cope. Regarding biodiversity, the developer's report was nonsense, absolute nonsense. They've put 3-storey houses here. The area is problematic anyway for sewage, and the drone will be further polluted by sewage release. It's an appalling, uninformed, cut and paste design inappropriate to this location.
Thank you, Mr. Hanran.
I recommend refusal. Thank you.
Do any members have any questions for Mr. Hanran? No. Right, the next speaker on this application is Shelley Emsley, who is also an objector. You have 3 minutes when you're ready. If you can press the speaker button. Thank you.
Good afternoon. As a retired police commander, I know the importance of listening to expert advice when making decisions subject to intense scrutiny that have lasting impact. Your expert, the planning officer, recommends you refuse this application. From a resident's perspective, I want to emphasise 4 points. Housing mix. Dronfield needs affordable starter homes and a better variety of homes to suit the local community. We started like many others in a two-bed semi, and retired residents need attractive downsizable bungalows. We don't have a city vibe for young professionals wanting urban living. We have young families and couples who aren't likely to buy or rent one-bedroom flats. If you browse Rightmove, you'll see large houses valued over $500,000 and not selling in Dronfield. They're either overpriced or more likely there isn't a market for them. The plan simply doesn't meet the spirit of a proportion of homes being affordable or meet people's housing needs in Dronfield. Topography. Homes on Southfield Mount are characterful and dug into the land, minimising their visual impact. Being nestled into the land means they'll be dominated by the development, and more importantly, without excavation, the current design will make our road a deep gully between housing on much higher ground. That will feel oppressive and exacerbate issues with surface and groundwater runoff, gushing down the road, which impacts the integrity of road surfaces at the junction and requires frequent repair. The green belt. This land is a wildflower meadow when not grazed by cattle and is full of bird and animal life. It's a working farm. It was never grey belt. The local plan mandated an improvement to the remaining green belt when it was redesignated. There is no credible plan to improve it. In fact, the developer wants to sink this large tank on the green belt. Fitting it and its ongoing maintenance will destroy green belt and certainly won't enhance it. Road safety and congestion. I've regularly seen dangerous overtaking and speeding on Chesterfield Road, causing near misses. Without traffic calming measures, a further junction and more turning and emerging vehicles causes additional hazards for road users and pedestrians. There's a massive underestimation of the vehicles, those per household, their visitors, deliveries and amenities. This will increase congestion at the single junction onto and off this large development, causing road safety danger, which frankly widening Callywhite Lane will not alleviate. And that's over half a mile away from the development, and it'll make it almost impossible to turn right out of Green Lane at peak times. It's likely that change will cause more congestion than collisions. I understand the need for local housing, but it should be well designed, sympathetic to existing residents, consider local people's needs and meet statutory requirements. The government's new plan to get Britain building emphasises building attractive houses with exemplary design and real character. That's what we want. I don't believe this application meets that ambition, and that's why I object. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for that. Do any members have any questions for the speaker? Nope.
Okay,
to return to your seat. Right then, members. The next speaker is the agent for the application, Michael Edgar. Mr. Edgar, if you'd like to take your seat, please. Right, you have 3 minutes when you're ready. Thanks.
Thanks very much. Yes, I'm Michael Edgar from DLP Planning. As you've heard, this is a housing allocation, the adopted local plan. The allocation itself references one of the key constraints to the development of the site, which is its gradient, as you've already heard today. It's been a significant constraint to the layout. It's informed the need for split level houses, and it's limited the opportunity for sods. But I would say that the LLFA, in their final representation, have confirmed that they do not object to the proposals. That's been subject to design development through the determination of this application. The proposals have been subject to design review panel twice, and an external consultant has reviewed the scheme twice as well, as you've heard. Design has been seriously considered, but there is clearly, as you've heard, disagreement on many of what are subjective points in terms of design, style and appearance. For instance, the character of the area has been referenced, and that's determined quite a large part by where you draw the character area. We tend to draw it more closely. We wouldn't, for instance, include Dronfield Town Centre. We also wouldn't see this as being a strategic gap between Dronfield and Unston, this being an allocation for housing. We appreciate the officer's report that the heights of the dwellings are appropriate and generally in keeping with local context. We also agree in terms of matters on boundary treatments and materials could be controlled effectively by a planning condition, if required. The landscape strategy is sought to deliver 10% biodiversity net gain, which is in land still within the greenbelt on the north side of Chesterfield Road. And it's also sought to retain the mature trees. That was following much of the design review panel's comments in terms of retention of the oak trees on site. Compensatory improvements have been provided, both with the biodiversity net gain to the north of the road, but also in terms of a fairly substantial tree belt to the east of the site to the existing footpath. There's nothing in local policy or national policy that stands against doubling up, as it's been put, the context of landscape and visual enhancements in respect of the greenbelt. So we think that the land is achieving what it needs to. Representations that the drainage tank is inappropriate in the greenbelt, it's a buried tank. So the openness in terms of vertical emphasis post-completion of the development would not be there. There's appeal schemes that have demonstrated that it's acceptable because it's engineering works. If I briefly summarise then, it's a housing allocation from the local plan. There is a mix of housing, 1 and 2 bed apartments, 3 to 6 bedroom dwellings. No more than 30% of any house type is put forward. 30% affordable can be provided, and financial contributions to infrastructure would total circa 1.75 million for education, NHS spaces, and consultation and open space as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Do any members have any questions for the applicant? Right, okay, there we go. Councillor Hancock.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just actually like to pick up on a point that was made by an earlier speaker, but obviously as agent I have the right to ask yourself on it, and the lack of exploration into different drainage solutions. There doesn't seem to have been anything considered. It's almost like this is the way we're going and nothing else. So I wonder if you'd expand on that a bit further, please.
Certainly. I'm not an engineer myself, but the way that it was approached at the outset, it really is the topography that determines what can be provided on site. For the developer, it would actually be a lot, if the site was flat, it would be much easier to do swales and open surface storage and things like that, rather than having an engineered solution. But unfortunately, because of the gradient and the need to control surface water runoff, this is the solution that it's ended up being. It has been considered by LFA. There are smaller scale things like increased landscaping, which can provide some aspect, but in terms of providing the control needed, this is the solution that it's come to.
Thank you. Councillor Rouse.
Good afternoon. My question is for you on our report on page 19, and it's been alluded to by a previous speaker about the sniff test.
Yes.
It says an hour. Do you really think that was probably long enough? And it was done at 13 degrees centigrade. So people are obviously saying that there's a very, very bad smell from the sewerage, etc. So can you enlighten me on anything? Why do you think that is that hour enough to do a proper test?
Speaking as a planner, the policy in terms of the allocation never identified odour as being an issue. Yorkshire Water were a consultant. The 400-metre standoff that's been referred to, it's not referenced in policy, as a matter of fact. The sniff test was undertaken on the applicant's approach, in all honesty, rather than anything else, rather than a technical requirement, because they wanted to understand it. And they considered that sniff test for an hour was appropriate to give them peace of mind and a future occupant peace of mind in that regard. If people are offended by the odour, I can understand that, I really can, but that's not a reason to refuse planning permission on an allocated site. There was no requirement from the outcome of that survey to suggest any mitigation was required either.
Okay, thank you for that, but I know I wouldn't certainly want to live near it.
I can understand that as well, but I think people looking to move to an area would look at houses, and there is obviously a strong community that live there, and they would make their decision based on that experience, I think.
I looked at it, yes. If I was buying one of those houses, it could be a day where that smell is pungent, so that would put me off of buying straight away.
I can understand that. You probably understand why the report was commissioned and undertaken, and they were satisfied that it wasn't an issue.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Right, Councillor Rennick next.
I'm actually next.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I think I'm on now. Sorry, Christine. Yeah, thank you.
Just bear with us a second.
When you've got this many people, you can't read. Right, I'll go to Councillor Gare first.
Okay. Can you confirm that the affordable housing is just in the apartments?
That was the intention, but having discussed with the planning officer, I appreciate it might have been after the publication of the report, we were happy to consider an appropriate mix. We were offering the apartments chiefly because it was easier to maintain in single blocks, and also we know that there is a need for smaller households to be provided for, but it was a conversation that we were happy to have in terms of specification.
Okay, thank you.
Now, Councillor Rennick.
Afternoon. I noticed you talked about subjectivity, and whilst I completely agree with that, I just wondered what you'd done in terms of engaging with local residents, because whilst there is subjectivity and your designs might go one way, this area actually has a very distinct natural characteristic landscape, and that's been looked at in great detail through the county under the local nature recovery strategy, and that distinction between urban and rural. And I just wondered what extent you've gone to discuss with local residents about what they would expect from a design and beautiful homes in our wonderful district council.
We had prior to submission of the application, there was a website with the reports and the plans available for public comment. As you can imagine, there's a huge range, again, because it is subjective in terms of comments. And one of the key things on a sloping site like this was sort of story height of buildings. And again, I think we've reflected that in that approach. There's always an aspect of reflecting character, but also creating the gateway. And there's tensions between those two aspects. So we've tried to take forward as many positive comments in a way to deliver a design that works and suits. And we think we have, but appreciate others will think that we have not. There was a lot of positive feedback from the PGA report, in fact, as well. And it has been an iterative process through the determination of the application as well, where decisions have been made to open up the end of roads, provide more screening, provide more landscaping, reconfiguring the frontage, changing the way that the points of roads coming off, they're kept as green focal points, providing a little bit of relief between it and increasing the banks to the green belt. But as with subjective matters, you can't satisfy every view.
I'm just going to add, I was more interested in the sort of house design and fabric, and there is a little bit of a lack of detail also. So it's very hard actually to get a full measure of what we're going to end up with in terms of design and quality. And I wonder whether you could have done more to actually ascertain what would have been a better fit.
The one guarantee I can provide you on that is because of the nature of the site, these are all bespoke house types because they're stepped. So these aren't cookie cutter designs at all. So in that respect, I think in terms of the quality of material, we would be very happy to be held to a condition. And I would tend to recommend a condition just now, just because of the supply of materials and making sure that they're available at the time when construction takes place and things like that. But that could then sit within the control of the council themselves.
Councillor Clough.
Thank you, Chair. Very similar to Councillor Rennick, on page 53, summary and conclusion 8.2, it quite clearly highlights that the layout, the street design, car parking arrangements, drainage and landscape strategies and connections with the rider area in the proposal is totally failing. Why has the developer not considered what the planning officers have actually said?
I have to disagree with you in the greatest of respect. There has been a number of alterations and amendments to the development proposals, and we believe that what we've come to is a good design. And your officers disagree, but there has been considerable discussion around this, and our concern is that there has almost been less weight attributed to some of the key physical constraints of the site in terms of the topography, which then informs the layout to meet the gradients, to then provide suitable development and appropriate design and equality. And we have reached, this is a scheme we would be confident in delivering.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Peterson.
That's it. You're proposing, am I right, to build 132 houses, is that correct?
Yes.
You have no play areas anywhere on this site. You are going to put in young families, and yet you've got no provision at all for play areas anywhere on site.
We can actually provide a play area, and the reason that there isn't a detailed proposal for it is because it requires a conversation with, I think it's Yorkshire Water, because of some of their utilities. So the intention is there's an area of open space on the frontage of the site which is relatively level, which can accommodate an area of play. The reason that it's not detailed up is because the underground utilities would limit the kind of play equipment that could be installed. So things like swings, you'd need foundations, so we'd need to be standoff from that. But there's no intention not to provide an area of play. And we could have that subject to a condition, but it would require a further conversation with utilities companies to make sure that it was delivered with the right equipment in the right place. But I entirely agree with you. It is entirely appropriate for an area of play to be provided on the scheme.
Would your frontage be on Chesterfield Road?
Sorry?
Would the frontage you're talking about
Yes.
be on Chesterfield Road? That is not an acceptable place for a play area. It's a main road. It needs to be in the centre of your development. Any play area should really be in the centre of a development, not by a main road.
It's set back from the main road, and I would only say that the issue with putting it centrally is, again, that issue around the change in grade. So it is extremely limiting as to how you would set that out.
Okay. Right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Edgar. We've got no more questions. If you'd like to retake your seat. Right, colleagues. You will now have the opportunity to put questions to the officers about the application. As always, I would like to keep this part of our proceedings focused on getting clarity about any points you are not sure of. Once we have done this, we can then have our discussion about the application based on what we have heard and read. Any questions for officers? Councillor Rennie.
Probably a point of clarification on 4.21 NEDCC housing, the second paragraph about the proposal of 4 to 6 units of affordable housing on this development. It says Dronfield is a high area of affordable housing, and it would be the council's preference, the majority of proposed affordable units, to be affordable rent and a small percentage of affordable ownership. Just wanted to know whether reference the council's preference, because as a member of this council, I don't remember voting anywhere about council's preference on this. Should that be amended to group preference or officer preference, or I wonder if somebody could just clarify that for me.
Sorry, was it 4.221? That was in response from the housing strategy team. So it's there. The housing strategy team have put forward that would be the council's preference.
Can we just make that more clear then? Because when it talks about the council, I would expect that to be representing the full council's view, and I'm not aware that that's been ever agreed or voted on. So it has to be specifically say the housing preference team or the Labour group or the whatever. It shouldn't say council's preference, in my opinion.
Adrian, are you coming in?
I note the point that Councillor Rennick made, Chair. We're just seeking to reflect the comments made to us in response to the application by the housing team. But I note the point. It is an officer, a housing officer view that's what the normal preference for the advice that we get is for affordable rent to be the preference of the tenancy. But I note the point that Councillor Rennick makes, Chair. It is an officer, housing officer view.
It just blew in the lines between affordable social shared ownership, and I do think that should be made clear. I think that needs to be amended to reflect officer council, because it isn't. It's incorrect as it's stated. Can we change that? Can we have that amended for?
I'm sure we can achieve that.
But I presume that's noted in terms of the fee, Chair, and
yes,
Alan's made a note of that.
Yeah. Right, no more questions for officers? Well, thank you to the officers for that. This leads us to the final part of the process, our discussion about what we have heard, what we think and what we want to decide. But before we go any further, I would just like to ask the clerk to remind us about motions.
Thank you, Chair. As you are aware, a motion must be moved and seconded before a vote is taken. If a motion is moved which goes against officer recommendations, then you must give the reasons for doing so. The reasons should comprise the relevant planning issues and be supported by evidence as necessary. If an amendment to a motion is moved, then that amendment will be voted on first. If a motion to reject officer recommendations falls, that is, it's not approved, then that does not mean that they are automatically approved. Rather, you will need to take a positive decision to either agree the recommendations or another course of action through a further motion that is voted on and approved by the committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you for that. Now open the floor for debate. Councillor Rennick.
Yeah, but my starting point is there is a strong presumption against development in the Greenbelt, and that's quite right. We are very unique in a wonderful part of the country of Derbyshire, and I do a lot of work with the local nature coverage strategy, and I'm very clear about the natural landscape characteristics. And housing should only be developed within the Greenbelt in very special circumstances, and set out in section paragraph 152 of the MPPF, and as such I would expect the planning application of this nature to go above and beyond to demonstrate that, and I'm afraid I don't think this application has achieved that. I think it's actually, to be fair, a little bit lazy and a little bit sloppy, and I think that this council should expect more from applications in a very special circumstance, and I don't think it's met the test. I've listened carefully to local representation and, of course, the officer's expert recommendations, and personally I would put a motion to reject as agreed with the officer's recommendations.
Councillor Hancock.
Sorry, that's it. It was... Oh, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I agree with what Carolyn said. I think, as people have said, yeah, it's in the local plan, but the design, it's not suitable. And while I respect what the agent was saying about the topography, the whole of Dronfield is on a huge gradient, and yes, it's subjective, but this, if we were to approve it, would be a blot on the landscape. So I second Carolyn's motion that we accept officer recommendations and refuse the application.
Adrian, you'd just like to come back in with a point?
Yeah, just one important point, Chair, if I may. Yeah, just one point in answer to what Councillor Rennick said, Chair, just to remind members of the site doesn't lie within the Greenbelt other than the element of it under which there is the tank. The vast majority of the site is allocated in your local plan for housing, so just important to bear that in mind, Chair, that very special circumstances aren't needed necessarily for, certainly not the housing element, but the tank does lie within the Greenbelt, but that's the only element of the site that does.
Thank you, that's noted. Councillor Baker.
Chair. Yeah, following on from that, it seems to me that, as the architect says, though, the SUDS, and the report says the SUDS hierarchy has not been followed, and the move to an engineered solution with an underground tank in the Greenbelt surely is necessitated by what appears to me to be very extensive development of the site, the massing of the properties, and the design and the layout could have been changed significantly to accommodate more sustainable stud solutions within the site. So I would support again support the officer's recommendation for refusal.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Anybody else want to enter into the debate? Councillor Clough?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think it's quite worrying that we've had an application of this standard come to the council. This is a gateway to Dronfield. It is the first area you will see as you enter Dronfield, and I'm in full support of the officer's recommendations.
Thank you. No more people wanted to enter the debate. Well, I would also reiterate what members have said. I'm just looking at the number of policies that this application goes against, and that's what we've got to rely on. We rely on our policies and the policies in the MPPF, and I don't think this meets the criteria at all. So I would fully recommend this application being refused.
I'll second that, Chair.
Nobody's proposed it as yet. That's full.
Are you? No, I think actually you were indicating that you. Sorry, you were indicating, members, that you would be inclined to that way. I don't think it was a formal motion.
She proposed it and he seconded it.
Okay, so moved and seconded by Councillor Renwick and Councillor Hancock to approve officer recommendations.
Yes.
Yeah.
Put that to the vote.
I suggest, Chair, that we, if you like, either we can have a roll call vote or sort of just by show of hands.
Show of hands? Yeah. Okay. We've got trouble with the machines. All those in favour? All those against? Any abstentions? That motion has passed. Thank you. I'm just going to give time for members of the public to leave.
Get David.
What's wrong?
Do you want me to go and get David? Because he's not here, is he?
No, absolutely.
Okay.
Actually gone.
Right, looks like he's coming back in anyway.
There he is, he's coming.
We got there in the end. Okay.
Right, colleagues, we'll get back to the meeting now. This moves on to the second application. As mentioned earlier, the officers have asked that the application be deferred so that further work on it can take place. I have agreed to this, but I have also asked them to explain the reasons for the deferral. So I'm now going to hand you over to Adrian Kirkham and David Thompson. Thank you.
Yes, Chair, thank you. Just first of all, the application has been with the Council for a number of months, as members will be aware, and we have tried to secure discussion about various points with the applicant over that time, and we hadn't had a great deal of success until very recently. So we did prepare the report for consideration by members, but we now have achieved that opportunity of discussing the matter with the applicant again, and he has said that he would like to address some of the technical matters that are outstanding, and as officers we've agreed with that. We think that's an appropriate way forward, Chair. There's also the potential that the matter may take a while to address. Those matters may take a while to address, and we are aware, of course, the pending publication of a revised MPPF, which may also need some consideration as well. So as officers, Chair, as you know, and in consultation with yourself, we did agree to that deferral, and we'll bring the matter back to members in due course. We have been able to contact all interested stakeholders ahead of this afternoon's meeting. So on that basis, Chair, we have agreed to deferral of the application with the applicants.
Thank you for that, Adrian. Councillor Baker, you have a question on that specific item?
On that specific item, yes. Obviously, this has come as a shock to people in Wingleworth, the deferral of this application, and there is concern that it was a clear policy matter. We were thought from the officer's report, what technical issues can there be to allow it to be deferred? Can you elaborate, please?
There are probably a couple of issues, particularly, Chair, in terms of that. Firstly, there's the issue around the affordable housing, which we've sought to get to discussion on, but there's also the specific area of biodiversity net gain, which the applicants have said they would specifically like to address in terms of achieving a resolution of that issue. So it's for those two areas primarily, Chair. But of course, any discussion about the technical matters is not prejudicial to the coming back to planning committee in due course and consideration of all those matters. So it doesn't prejudice the final decision of the council, Chair, but as an officer view is that was the most appropriate way forward.
Thank you, Adrian. Can you just turn your microphone still? Okay, thanks for that. So now we move on to the final second application, which is at North Wingfield, which is NED/23/0038382/FL, North Wingfield. Given its length, I won't read the description of this full application. In line with our normal practices, I am going to ask the planning officers to give a brief presentation showing any photos and plans of the site. I will allow the officers to complete the presentation. Consequently, members, unless you have a point of order that you feel cannot wait, could you please reserve these or any questions about the process until the end? So now I'm going to hand you over to Graham Cooper. Thank you.
Get the right. Oh, thanks, Chair. Item 2 up on the board. So it's application 23/00382/FL. So this plan application seeks permission for 64 affordable dwellings with Suds Pond landscaping, replacement mugger, skate park and play area. Included in the plans is a new community pavilion, 3 sports pitches and associated parking. Members should note that the proposal would result in the loss of land allocated in the local plan as a recreation site. In return, a new mugger, skate park and play area would be provided to replace the loss of the existing facilities, which are in a poor condition. The pavilion and sports pitches, whilst forming part of this application, would require the Parish Council securing funding and delivering at a later date for which there is no guarantee. The most important element of the proposal that I would like to emphasise to members is that relating to policy ID 10 of the local plan, which seeks to prevent the loss of such areas subject to the 5 listed provisos in the policy. Officers don't believe these have been met, and without any guarantee that the pavilion and the playing pitches will be delivered, it is considered that the benefits of the scheme do not outweigh the loss of the open space in this instance. Members yesterday who attended the Planning Committee site visit were shown a full suite of photos. I won't go through all those again today. A single representation has been received from the applicant in response to the officer's report to members. The key points raised in the reps have been addressed in the officer comments section. Just at 4.7 of that officer comment, please note that the final sentence should just be disregarded. That was left in there. I don't know how that was left in there, but that's just an error and that should be omitted. In addition to the late reps, officers would like to draw members' attention to the title page of the officer report and can confirm that the applicant is in fact its Gida Construction, North Wingfield Parish Council and the Guinness Partnership. So this first slide illustrates the application site shaded yellow. The application site lies to the northwest of North Wingfield, just to the west of the former Danecourt School, and is part of an adopted recreation site, and part of the site is on the Brownfield Register. Next slide, please. So this zoomed in plan of the application site. Access is taken from Chesterfield Road to the east. Danecourt School lies, the new school lies to the north, with the Five Pits Trail to the west. The former school site is on the right edge of that shaded area. Also to the east is the former Working Men's Club, which lies outside the application site. The southern extent of the application site fronts onto Black's Lane, which will serve 4 dwellings. Next slide, please. So this is the site location plan. So the next slide. So I've just put this together just to indicate and illustrate the extent of the recreation site hatched in yellow, which is allocated in the local plan in relation to the approximate line of the location plan, edged in red. So the next slide, this is the wider site plan, which illustrates 64 affordable homes, Suds Pond, landscape planting, replacement mugger, skate park and play area. The pavilion and sports pitches can also be seen centrally on the plan. Next slide, please. So this is a more zoomed in version of the housing element of the scheme. While some of the site redevelops the former Danecourt School, which is a brownfield site, the remaining homes will be constructed on land allocated in the local plan as recreation land. The scheme consists of 64 affordable rental properties, being a mix of 1, 2, 3 and 4 bedroom properties, including apartments, bungalows and semi-detached dwellings. Next slide, please. So this is the phasing plan which the applicant has put together. So phase 1, I'll try and run through it because it's quite hard to pick up on the screen. So phase 1 is the access road installed, compound created on the site of the pavilion car park, replacement play area, mugger, skate park to be constructed. Phase 2 will be the housing and Suds Pond with foundations put in for the pavilion. Phase 3 will be the further housing. And then phase 4, houses on Black's Lane constructed and playing pitches formed at a future date. Next slide, please. So this slide illustrates a couple of street scene views created by the applicant. The top one, elevation 4, is taken from the recreation site looking back towards the proposed development. The other at the bottom, elevation 8, that's from Black's Lane. Then next slide, please. So I'll just run through a few of the house types that are proposed. This is the apartment building. This is a one-bed, two-person bungalow, which will be off Blacks Lane. And then we've got a few examples of the semi-detached units that you can just spin through. And then this is the indicative elevations of the proposed pavilion. This is the landscaping scheme. So you've got tree-lined streets for the majority. You've got a footpath which arcs around the site, and that'll be tree-lined. And also the site entrance will have some landscaping. So this is the wider landscaping plan. And illustrates siting. So the Suds Pond will be framed by mixed planting. A wildflower meadow is also proposed. There's also planting areas to the north and around the Suds Pond. So members yesterday will have seen a lot more site visit photos than will be shown today. I've just got a few key photos here. So this one's taken from the proposed site entrance looking north along Chesterfield Road. The crossing seen here will be relocated with the agreement of Derbyshire County Council if permission is granted. So this is just looking south along Chesterfield Road. This is taken looking up Blacks Lane with the former school boundary on the right hand side. So this is a wider angle of the current play area. On the left hand side you see the skate park, yeah, so there's the play area, the current play area, so it's quite sparse and some bits seem in quite a poor state of repair. You've got the skate park on the right hand side and the mugger centrally located. So this is just a wider view of the recreation site. So on the right hand side you can see the current boundary of the old school site. So this footpath will be relocated and houses will develop to the left of that photo. And the new mugger and skate park will be in the distance at the far extent of that tree line. And this photo shows the current overgrown and disused tennis courts, which are at the far extent of that play area. And these will be replaced with a new mugger and skate park. And that concludes the presentation, Chair.
Right, colleagues. We have 4 speakers on the application. The first is Councillor Nigel Barker, speaking as Chair of North Wingfield Parish Council. All the speakers will have 3 minutes to get over their points and will be informed when they have 30 seconds remain. You can ask them to clarify any matters that have been raised, but remember your questions should only relate to the points which have already been made. Right, Councillor Barker.
Thank you, Chair. I know you've just said it, but just to be clear, I'm speaking to the Chair at Parish Council today and also in a personal capacity, because you may not be aware, but I've been personally involved with this, trying to develop this field for a long while. I always tell the tale that I used to help run North Wingfield Colts when my lad were 10 and he's now 43. So that's how long I've been on with this job, really. And we used to go to places like Mansfield Woodhouse and Buxton, where they got purpose-built changing rooms. They got toilets for a start. We ain't got none of them. And cafe areas, and we used to get changed in back at Spinner, if you know it. And so that were embarrassing, as an understatement, I think. Since then, I've tried on several occasions to get some facilities on that field. And in 2017, the Parish Council started a consultation for a parish plan. It was called 2020 Vision, very clever, I think, for North Wingfield. We came out for this desire. There was a desire by the community to have more and better facilities for the youth and hopefully re-establish that Colts team. So on the back of that vision, the Parish Council jumped at the chance when to work with the developers and try and link the two schemes together in order to achieve that vision. Again, to say this has took a long time is an understatement, but I think it's fair to say that everyone can see that this will be a benefit not just for Wingfield but for the south of the district as well. And like it's been said, the stumbling block is the loss of the small part of the playing field. which, let's not forget, will be for social housing, 100% of social affordable housing. And I fully respect the views of the officers, and I know Graham and David and Adrian have worked really hard to try and assist and make this scheme conform to all the planning requirements. But there's no denying that some of the field will be built on if the application is approved. The question you need to ask, does it significantly improve the leisure, amenity and sports facilities? Does that outweigh the loss of the small part of the field? Like it says in the report, the crux of the argument against the scheme is the fact that we, that is the parish council, although we are one of the joint applicants, can't 100% guarantee that we will deliver that pavilion and some of the improvements. It is vital that the planning permission is granted for us able to secure that funding. So on back of that, we have done some work. We've got the Derbyshire Girls and Women League involved. They're going to be the end users. And on back of that, we've had positive noises from the FA that they will help us with the funding of the pavilion and the maintenance of the pitches. So taking all that into account, I'd really respectfully ask that you take all this into your deliberations, and I know the planners or the developers will put some alternatives to what our planners have said. So I'd really like you to grant conditional planning approval.
Thank you, Councillor Barker.
Thank you.
Do any members have any questions for Councillor Barker on the points he's raised? Councillor Cheetham. Oh, it's Councillor Gare. Councillor Gare, then Councillor
Overlooked
Cheetham.
again.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Barker. I just wanted to ask about the consultation. You did mention that. Yeah. But was that now a while ago, and have you continued to talk to people about this proposal?
It started in 2017, and like I say, it were entitled the 2020 Vision. So by 2020, we'd got this. There is a glossy brochure somewhere. This is just a bit I got on my shelf that highlighted what came out of that consultation. We have, on back of this proposal, consulted again, and we've had quite a few back saying that they're in favour of the pavilion and the improvement community groups, because I think we've done it twice now, because it's been a long process. Where we give grants out every year, and we've had all the community groups into community centre, and we've had a chap, Adam, who's chasing funding for us. He's put a questionnaire together with the developers that's gone out in the community, and we've had a lot of response. We've had very few negative responses, which is positive, because we need to have that engagement to get funding, basically. But we're still on with that process. Cheers.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Cheetham. Yes,
okay, thank you. Yeah, just in the officer's report, it says something along the lines of the delivery of the facilities cannot be guaranteed. These facilities would ever come forward. So basically, I think it's sort of relating to funding, etc. And Councillor Barker, you mentioned that you'd heard positive noises from the FA and others. I was just wondering if you could sort of quantify that a bit more. Sort of how sort of certain are you that you could achieve the funding for these facilities?
I'm trying.
It's page 133 in summary and conclusion.
I'm trying to find an email that they had from Adam, our man, who talked to the FA. Here it is. I don't know if this is top secret, confidential, or whatever.
But to betray any secrets.
But he spoke to him. He said, I encourage him to say, in principle, how much might be able to bid for. And he suggests packaging the cost of the football pitches and pavilion, and they tend to fund 65% of the costs. This is from Liam Rooney, not Wayne Rooney, Liam Rooney from the Derbyshire FA. So we've got that. There's caveats around that, where he said he would help if 40% of the costs were from the client or other funders. So basically, we've got a commitment there, I'd say, for 60% of the cost from the Derbyshire FA. He also said, and I've not spoke to him to be fair, which I should do, that the new government is really got positive noises about encouraging the women's football basically. So he's positive that there'll be even more money because they'll be the end users. Because I didn't get round to saying everything, but they are desperate for a base in the north of the county. The Derbyshire and Lade, I don't know if you, Andrew, but they have to play in Derby, I think. And any team, they all lump up at a big place. And they really want a base in the north of the district, the county, sorry. And they really keen to get this over the line.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Clough.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Barker. Just so I can get this clear in my mind, yes, you're right, there is a fine line to be drawn here, and I can understand where the planning officers are coming from. What I'd like to understand is the current area, how well is it used? How well is the skate park used and the park used? And would we see an increase of usage should that be developed?
I think that's a fair question. I think when it were new, it were very well used, especially the skate park. And it has, I think 12 years, it's got a bit battered. And to be honest, we've not replaced the floodlights because we got this in background. So it's not as inviting as it was. I think if we've got a new and improved area, then I'm sure it would be used. And hopefully, and I think if you went on site visit, you've seen the play area that was supposed to be vandal proof. 2 or 3 of them, that piece of equipment are no longer usable. So it needs a coat of looking at. It does need improving. If this don't get approved, we'll have to go back and improve them facilities anyway, I think.
Thank
so
you.
It ticks 2 boxes really, that one.
Councillor Rennick.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Barker. Definitely, the site is definitely ripe for regeneration, and I share your pain in terms of trying to get a scheme like this. I'm as chair of Eckington Parish Council, looking at something very similar. 3 full-size football pitches. I was wonder whether that was ever achievable on any kind of Section 106 or agreement. I'd be interested to know how much a football pitch is. I was just interested to know because obviously when we've been looking at Eckington and we're still trying to sort this out, and I'm pleased to hear that there's maybe funding locally. That's really, and it would be good in terms of growing the game, particularly the women's game. I know in Eckington, our Eckington Football Club have got 30 odd teams, and it's still growing because of the girls' game. But yeah, it was just for me when I saw 3 full-size football pitches. I did think that's quite a quite a task.
That one, and again, that's why the FA and the Girls and Women's League are interested, because it's the ex-Danecourt Secondary School field. Where the skate park in Mugar is, that was what we call the rec, and there's no drainage under that. The school field, where the 3 pitches are already there, if you walk on it, not to bring politics, but what they call, we're paying them to cut it, and they've not been very good this year, so it don't look as good as it used to. But when County Council were cutting it, which the parish pay for, you could see that there's already 3 pitches there, flat, drained, ready to go. It might need a little smartening up, not a lot. I think the FA have had somebody come and look at it already. It'll cost next to no money to improve the drainage. Where the play area, what was the junior school area, there's no drainage under that. Where the Danecourt Secondary School was, which is empty, and nobody's using that. It's just where people let the dogs go at the moment, because there's no access. So there's a massive area of green field, more than 3 pitches really. That still leaves a bit extra towards incline. You could definitely get that. That's why they were really keen. So they can use say 3 full-size pitches, but you can mark them down into different sizes when girls are playing. Or, and ideally, going back to where I started, I want to re-establish the Colts teams so that teams from Wingfield can use it as well. That's my dream.
No, exactly. I was just going to actually add to that. I mean, I don't know why, if you're looking at a serious football proposal, I think probably 4G pitches, which even bigger bloater budgets should be considered.
I mean, this is one of the things is there will be a 4G pitch at Charlie Park. These will just be grass pitches used on a Sunday. But without proper drainage, that's where they've got a problem. Moment, hopefully we'll overcome that. They'll be able to play through winter.
Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Chair. Nigel, with regards to talking about ladies, girls football, which you know me, I'm all for all this kind of stuff. Is there any currently in North Wingfield or in that area?
No, as far as I know, I think the girls play with the junior teams up to a certain age, don't they? With the boys teams, but I think after a certain age, I think they have to split them apart. I don't know what age that is, but I think quite a few of the junior sides, under 10s, under 11s, have got mixed teams. So girls want to play, they can, but as it stands, Andrew, there's no teams in North Wingfield. That were one at downsides because we went to FA 8-9 years ago, and without having 10 teams, I will use in Dronfield as the example, you know, Gosforth School, where they did something similar, and I went to the same chap, and he said, unless you've got an established team, you'll not get money. That's why we went to girls and ladies team to be the end user. Otherwise, we won't get this. So that's his first hurdle. Get that there, and then it's, what is it? You come and they'll build it and they'll come, sort of thing. At the moment, we ain't got no facilities, so we can't have a team. And it's one of them jobs.
Thank you. Thank you. I've got a question, Nigel. Just regarding, I've been looking at, obviously looked at the 106 monies that's been put forward towards this application. And it really only seems to talk about the moving of the play equipment to a different location. What other assistance could the developer do to help you get this over the line?
Well, I think we've been talking about this for a while, but from my head, what I think it would make it more likely that we'll get a pavilion, because at the moment I think it says in the report that it's a temporary car park, or where they'll book the cabins. If we could make that a permanent car park, so that there's something already there that we can put the pavilion on, and ideally, I mean, I've not put this to anybody, with some services already in. I know the cabins will have to be there. So basically, instead of leaving it with a temporary car park, temporary surface, that it'd be a proper tarmac surface, and then I think that then commits the parish to finish the job, if you like, because then I think if it's just temporary, it'll in no time it'll get overgrown, weeds and stuff, and it'll go back to a field again, and we'll be back to square one, because we really are committed to making this happen. And it's not going to be a cheap option, I hear that, but it's, again, going back, it's not just about Wingfield, this isn't. I think the whole south of the district, I know you've got Charlie Park, but this will be an entity for especially for girls football.
Could we not also end up in a position where we've got a tarmacked area in the middle of a field that's not developed?
That's what I'm saying. If it's tarmacked, I think there's a commitment then that we'll have to finish the job, because otherwise the parish will look down. They'll say, well, you've got that there, what are you doing with it? Whereas if it's temporary, it just gives that impression that, well, they just built the houses and gone. Because it might take a while to get us ducks in a row to get all this pavilion, you know, the money for it, and the management of that pavilion, there's some thoughts around that. I might be coming to you, Andrew, on that. How you run Pilsley, you know the trust, how you've set that up. I think that's what I'm thinking in my head. So that's got to be established, and then we go. But I think if it's already tarmacked, then it shows that we're committed to it. That's what I'm thinking. I was thinking this other day, and I thought that might be just that extra push, that's all.
Councillor Cooper.
Thank you. Well, funnily enough, Nigel, that's what I was going to come to you about. The fact that you're going to be landed probably with a billion that's worth £500,000, I'm guessing. I don't know, because I'm not sure what estimates or guesstimates you've got on that. Probably more than that, yeah. Obviously, Pilsley's was less than that, but still a considerable amount of money. I was going to ask you how you intended to manage that facility to get the best out of it for Wingfield and for that surrounding area, because it's a big undertaking. If you've got existing clubs, for instance, who form a management of that for you, then and they've got the commitment to do it, then great. But you know, it's they don't come with the money. You know, you've got to pay for that facility week in, week out, year in, year out for a considerable time. So you've got to have a plan to do that.
I tell you what, Andrew, I've lost sleep over this.
I can believe it.
Because if it does get approved, being chair at parish council, I think, you know, have we set ourselves up with a massive debt? But just recently we've come with this idea, and if the FA can get on board, Epthorne Lane Football Club, I think, wanting to move and get a better pitch, so they can get on board. We did go halfway down this route once when the working men clubs were shutting down, that they'd be on board as well. So we'd have a sports and social club on the field, and then they went and sold it to somebody else, and that sort of vision went. But that was the original thought, to set up a separate sports and social club that the parish should be party to, and we can commit some money to that. What I don't want, and this is why I've had discussions with Graham, and for the parish to take 100% ownership of that pavilion, which will be nice, and Stephen will know this. I've got Kilmarsh Leisure Centre in the back of my head, that in 20 years' time, when it wants a new roof, that we'll not be able to go out for funding for that. So it needs a trust that can chase money, but charitable trust that can do that all itself. So that's the vision that I've got at the moment. That's what
round it up, Nigel? Sorry, just here. Sorry. Right, I think I'm going to bring this part to a close. Have you got one more question? Is it brief?
It is brief.
Can we get a brief answer?
Yeah, it's more of a statement, though. The reality is, though, Councillor Barker, my point was just going to be, you maybe constrain yourself with 100% affordable housing. I know you're not going to like this, but if you had some element of, because it doesn't give you any wiggle room to extract any money out of Section 106 or other things, maybe you should think about the site having some other allocation that might give a bit more back into the Section 106.
Caroline, I'm not precious on that, and I think that's been a discussion that the officers have had with the developers, because the end user will be Guinness Trust. They're the ones that will own the houses, I believe, and I think that wasn't a starter. But you'd be better off asking Graham or the developer that. It's not us that's building the houses. All I'm trying to say is that we would like the pavilion.
Thank you for that. I think it got a bit protracted, but I think we're all parish councillors as well, so we all want to give you a chance to speak and put your position forward to us. So thank you for your time, Councillor Barker. We're now going to bring in Heather Watton, who is going to speak to us over Teams, I believe.
Hiya guys, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you fine.
Yeah,
You've got
good.
3 minutes when you're ready.
Thank you. Many thanks for the invitation to do this today. Myself and my partner actually reside in number 38 Chesterfield Road, and we're, needless to say, a little bit surprised when we saw the scale of the development that was being proposed. Whilst we're not opposed to regeneration of the area, in some capacity, in the capacity that's been set out at the moment, it's far larger than is sustainable, based on the fact that the only access other than to 4 dwellings, all other 60 dwellings, pavilion, pitches, play park, etc., will all be accessed via one road in and one road out. During the time, they ran some tests, and it estimates that there'll be 223 vehicular movements, with 90%, 94%, which is 209 of those being through the access road directly adjacent to our property. We are actually a party wall. We share the party wall to the site, the old school wall, and it equates to a vehicle passing our house every 8 minutes daily, 24 hours a day. We do not believe that the peak hour traffic figures to be accurate with respects to due to working and school-aged children, and there's no information stated for varied work patterns for adults encompassing early hours, evenings, night shifts, along with no assessment for the additional vehicular use of the sports facility, and no assessment for pedestrian use of the development of this size. It also does not consider the low ambient background levels that are present currently on all sides of our property in comparison to the expected noise levels of a high traffic road, and residents of a new development, pedestrian pavement, sports complex, car park, football pitches, and potentially a small sub-power station within a small short distance of our property. The impact of the noise from this traffic would already be significant based on the information stated in these tables, and we would appreciate further information on how this has been calculated, and politely request that a full assessment should be put in place for all hours compared to the similar developments of this scale and nature as one access route located directly next to one property.
30 seconds remain.
The volume of traffic... Say again, sorry?
30 seconds remain.
Oh, sorry. The volume of traffic has increased hugely over the last 2 years already. We've seen a lot of very dangerous speeding, and the lollipop lady was actually just recently knocked and hit by a car. Thankfully, she wasn't injured seriously. However, taking that into consideration with then the antisocial behaviour which we're having recurrently on the site, both from the existing skate park and play park and the old working men's club, where we're seeing constant vandalism and attendances by the police.
That's time.
Okay.
Thank you. Do any members have any questions about the points the Speaker has raised? No? Okay. Thank you. Right then, the next speaker is Amy Hutton, the applicant. Miss Hutton, you if you'd like to take the seat, and when you're ready, you've got 30 seconds. That's 3 minutes, sorry, not 30 seconds. 30 seconds remaining, yeah. Nearly. I'm getting ahead of myself.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. My name is Amy Hutton, and I'm here on behalf of the Guinness Partnership, a registered provider of affordable housing and a named applicant on this application. The Guinness Partnership is a not-for-profit registered provider with over 65,000 homes and 140,000 residents. The application site will deliver 64 homes for affordable rent, directly contributing 37% of the district's annual delivery target of 172 affordable homes. It should also be noted that the political landscape has changed recently, and we anticipate a significant shift in government policy towards accelerated housing delivery with increased housing targets to reach. The proposed housing mix responds directly to the local need, incorporating a mix of 1-bed maisonettes, 1- and 2-bed bungalows, and 2-, 3- and 4-bed houses. And this scheme is designed to provide
14 or 22% as M42 lifetime homes compliant. The delivery of the affordable rented homes by a registered provider will ensure that the homes remain affordable in perpetuity, unless disposed of under the obligations in respect of right to buy, right to acquire, or right to shared ownership. The homes will be let at 100% first let nominations with the council through their choice move letting system. There are a range of other benefits that this scheme will provide. However, most importantly, the scheme will deliver local needs affordable housing. Data provided by the council's letting service, Rykeneld Homes, shows that there has recently been an average of 50 bids per affordable property in this area alone. Further data provided shows that there are 115 applications currently for an affordable home with a local connection to North Wingfield. The applicants will work with officers to ensure that there is a clear mechanism within the section 106, to ensure local residents have priority access to these homes. Overall, we believe that the proposed development represents a well-considered use of the available land and responds to local needs and site constraints. Following the officer's recommendation today would result in no land receipt generated for Derbyshire County Council, no affordable housing delivery, and no improved mugger, skate park and play equipment for the local community. And I welcome any questions members have before deciding this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Members have any questions for the speaker? Councillor Jones. Peterson, sorry. Doing well today.
Good afternoon. In your proposal that we've got here, it says that you've included in the proposal is 3 full-size football pitches, community sports pavilion, mugger skate park, play equipment, outdoor gym equipment and recreation space. Aren't you not providing that now? Because that was your original proposal, so what's happened? That's why it's changed.
So nothing has changed in that respect. We submitted the planning application as 3 parties. So the parish council was one applicant and that was part of their proposal. We decided to put it together in one large master plan to show the whole scheme. However, the Guinness Partnership wouldn't be directly delivering that. Our bread and butter is to deliver affordable housing.
Right, okay. That answers that.
Any further questions, Speaker? No, if you'd like to retake your seat. Thank you. Right, the next speaker is Mark Jeremy, the agent. If you'd like to take your seat at the speaker's table. You have 3 minutes when you're ready. The microphone's on. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. My name is Mark Jeremy, Senior Partner of House Lloyd Architects in Nottingham, and this application is made on behalf of North Wingfield Parish Council, the Guinness Partnership and Gaida Construction as joint applicants forming a comprehensive proposal. The scheme, as has already been stated, provides 64 fully affordable houses as well as significant quantitative and qualitative improvements to the existing leisure and recreation facilities and a new sports pavilion and 3 grass pitches. The proposed replacement facilities are significant improvements in both quantity and quality from the existing provision. I'm sure you can see from the proposals the qualitative improvements, but to give you an idea of the quantitative improvements. The Muga is a standard size to meet Sport England's guidance and so is the same size as the existing. The play equipment provides 350 square metres and 220 square metres of outdoor gym equipment, improving the existing quantity by 380%, the existing being 150 square metres. The proposed skate park is almost double the size of the existing, providing 89% more area, the existing being 761 square metres, the proposed 1,438 square metres. The new football pitches provide formal sports for the area, supported by the Derbyshire Girls and Ladies League, but will also be available for general recreation and other football games when it's not being used for formal matches and training. The proposals for 64 affordable houses are provided on 50% brownfield land and 50% rural exception housing land outside but directly adjacent the settlement boundary. The land outside the settlement boundary is allocated as recreation land but is classed as out of service in the North East Derbyshire Recreation Research Report from 2017, the latest one. Discussions with planning officers have concluded that this out of service land should be included in any calculations, despite it not being recognised in the council's documents, and therefore policy ID10 is applied to the area. To comply with ID10 as per section 2A of the policy, we have undertaken a detailed assessment of the typologies of the policy across the whole of North Wingfield parish and found there to be in excess of 7.36 hectares of recreation land within the village prior to development. The loss of 0.94 hectares for the development of 100 affordable housing still leaves 6.42 hectares of surplus recreation land available. The officer suggests that the Suds Pond and fenced-off landscaping should be included within the development area calculations, a position we disagree with. The Suds Pond serves both the housing and the pavilion and the grass pitch drainage and is a landscaped area which adds to the character and setting of the development, along with the enhanced areas of landscaping around the edges of the existing field. Sorry, was that time?
Yes, yes, it is. Right, do any members have any questions? I do. I'd just like to know the position on the play equipment. So obviously you need to remove the existing play equipment to another location. Is this work that you will be undertaking as part of the development, or are you just donating the money for the parish council to do that work?
It's an either or. An amount of money of £500,000 has been made available based on budgeted cost estimates and quotes for the Muga, the skate park and the play equipment. So it can be paid through a section 106, but it's for North Wingfield Parish Council to spend that money on those proposals, or Gator Construction as developer contractor will carry out those works as part of the development in lieu of that money.
Right, so has that been fully budgeted and costed?
Yes.
Right, but doesn't include any of the additional equipment mentioned
So
in the application?
it provides for all of the equipment that's on the drawings.
Right.
The only thing that's left to debate at the moment is in the children's play area whether you have a springy chicken or a springy duck, or if you get my drift, there's an allowance based on a quote. The final choice of that play equipment would be taken with North Wingfield Parish Council, who will be maintaining it, and the advisors of officers at North East Derbyshire District Council play in open space.
Right, okay. Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Chair. It was touched on in the presentation, but I didn't quite absorb it all. Are you able to elaborate a bit more on what's planned for the restoration or planting or landscaping in the part of the site that's not going to actually be developed?
In terms of the landscaping generally, in the analysis, there's an amount of recreation ground out of service, and the policy ID10 talks about the North East Derbyshire District Green Standard, and that is made up of sports, amenity, public, urban open space and allotments. And going through the analysis, there are surplus allotments, and when the other typologies are in deficit within your policy and there's a surplus of recreation land, then you can move certain typologies around to make sure that, in this case, Graham perhaps doesn't agree, I respect that, but essentially we're making up for the deficits of other space types by the removal of the surplus of the recreation land. There is still a surplus of recreation land, but there's also land changed to formal sports. When that's not being used for sport, it can be used for recreation and amenity. Obviously, the pavilion is there for both changing rooms, medical facilities, car parking, and that can be used by other sports other than football, because there's an internal club room and so on. So the landscape as a whole will change to urban green space, parkland, suds area, biodiversity. The biodiversity net gain is at 14%, so a significant advancement from the net gain baseline, but complies with the Environment Act as it currently stands. And all of those landscaping proposals are included in the proposal as a whole. They will be carried out.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? No? If you'd like to retake your seat.
Thank you.
Right, colleagues, you will now have the opportunity to put questions to officers about the application. As always, I would like to keep this part of our proceedings focused on getting clarity about any points you are not sure of. Once we have done this, then we can have a discussion about the application based on what we have heard and read. Councillor Rennick.
Yeah, I probably have a number of questions or queries formulated, not least because unlike, I'm a sub for today. I only got on this committee as of last night as a sub, so I'm perhaps not as up to speed because I've not had a chance to read it probably as much as I would have liked. But I just noticed on the reasons for refusal, I do really like to scrutinise the actual policies and the NPPF, and I'm struggling to find them on here. So it seems like a judgment call, and I'm getting the, I completely understand that there's a. It seems like a site absolutely ripe for development. I didn't go on the site visit because I was too late. Before I was informed to go on this committee this morning. But it looks like a site that needs development, and I absolutely support and appreciate the fact that there's some recreation provision should be provided. But I haven't seen, and I just want to know if officers can actually give me a little bit more clarity, because I'm mindful to always look at office recommendations very seriously, and they've recommended refusal, but I just want to make sure that I'm completely understanding that, because what you're asking us to do is we've got a site that's ready for development, so we can deliver houses. It says in the report there's a lot of people waiting for houses, social housing, affordable housing in this area. By refusing that, we're stopping that. We've got a new government in who are hell-bent on actually delivering lots of houses, and we're slowing that process down, which I just need to understand. And also, we're setting a precedent by saying it's refusing it because of the lack of recreational land at a case of 2 hectares, which in old money is 5 acres. And are we setting a precedent that it's a small development by normal standards? Are we setting a precedent that a small development like this, we should be putting aside sections 106 and others for 5 acres of recreational land? I'd love to see that, but it's not realistic, and I just would like officers to explain a little bit more about how, because I don't want to stop housing development if it's needed, and I don't want to stop having social recreation, but there's got to be there's a bit of a mismatch here, and I'm struggling to find the NPPF policy specifics that would help clarify this for me, and I think it's lacking in this report.
Thank you. Are you going to, who's going to respond to that? You, Graham?
Okay, I'm not 100% sure what the question was in that, but I'll try and answer as best I can. So this.
Make it simple then. Give me sort of at least 1 or 2 policy specifics in the NPPF.
Okay, so I'll just take a step back. So the proposal seeks to develop on a brownfield site, brownfield site, but also on site that's allocated and protected in the local plan as recreation site. So if we were to allow development, which we support on the brownfield site, that is perfectly in line with the local plan and NPPF. But the issue we've got is local plan policy ID 10 seeks to protect the recreation site. So if we were to allow the development of between loss of 1.6 up to 2 hectares of recreation space for housing, we believe that is contrary to policy ID 10 of the local plan.
It's definitely 2 hectares that's safeguarded in terms of recreation. I'm just trying to get this balance right of how, not wanting to stop housing development. I don't know why they haven't just pulled this and got their heads together and
Could you?
The funding that's stopping it from having the football pitches, or whether it's the more housing on the hectares that's the problem.
What it might do, it might be helpful to maybe share a plan from the presentation, and also maybe look if we've got a few figures within the officer report as well. So if you go to figure 3 in the officer report, so that outlines the area that's allocated in the local plan as recreation space. Page 90. Yeah, and if you go to figure 5, which is on page 113, that shows the area which is included in the Brownfield register. So maybe having those two in mind, and then look at what the proposal is. So the application site is the red line, whereas they won't build houses on all that, but what will be lost from the recreation space for housing will be for housing, the landscaping and the suds pond will be approximately, between 1.6 and 2 hectares of the recreation space. So hopefully that provides a little bit more clarity of what, if you were to grant permission, that space will be lost from the local plan for recreation forever. So do the benefits of the scheme outweigh the loss of that recreation space? And in officers' view, that's not the case.
And just for the microphone, Chair. Just to try and amplify what Graham's saying, Chair. It's that balance when reading your local plan as a whole. You have to weigh all the various elements up. And in this instance, there's as Graham says, there's part of the site that's on the Brownfield site within the settlement limits, which would accord with your policies in terms of housing delivery in general terms. Then outside the settlement limits is the area that, as Graham said, is the area that's protected under your policy ID 10 as open space, and then you've got your 5 criteria against which that loss should be addressed. And in terms of the officer view, there's the weight to be attached to the delivery of your affordable housing. That needs to outweigh, if you believe it's acceptable, the loss of that open space. So that's your equation. The issue that we've got in terms of officers in weighing that is that we've sought to encompass the delivery of the pavilion and the 3 sports pitches within all this to be able to assure you that if you were granting permission for something that would result in the loss of your open space, contrary to that policy of your local plan, that we will be able to say to you, this will definitely come forward if you're granting permission. And we've tried various discussions and negotiations with the developer, as Councillor Barker alluded to, as officers to try and unlock that, but the developers are saying, we're only going to build the housing, so we can't say to you that the other benefits of the scheme are going to come forward. And in our view as officers, therefore, because we can't guarantee that to you, Chair, we don't believe the balance has been reached to outweigh the loss of your open space. So it's that balance that you will need to make a judgment on this afternoon, but that's the balance and the weight where we've placed it, Chair. We've placed weight on the protection of your open space in accordance with that policy, because we don't think that the benefits of the scheme, we can't guarantee them to you, and therefore we don't believe they outweigh the harm. And that's the judgment. I think that's the judgment that you have to balance. That's the judgment that we've concluded, that the benefits, we can't say to you that they outweigh the harm, because they're not going to be delivered through this permission. Because we've explored the opportunity of phasing the delivery so that some houses come forward, the pavilion's provided or the sports pitch you provided, and then some more housing comes forward. So we've sought to phase it so that we can say to you that yes, the housing will be delivered, but the sports provision will also be delivered. But we've not been able to conclude a resolution of that with the developer. We're left with being unable to say to you that the pavilion, the sports pitches will definitely come forward. They will be reliant out with the development. So
Just to clarify, Chair, is that because they can't afford it from the development proceeds under Section 106?
that's what we're advised, Chair, yes. Yes.
My other thing then is,
Your
will anybody
microphone.
will anybody else deliver 5 hectares of recreation? I mean, I know I'm just in the middle of doing one on Eckington. We know the cost of creating parks. Is it realistic? Are we going to be here next scheme? I'm surprised it's not being pulled as opposed to being rejected on the basis that you've got affordable housing. It doesn't bring that Section 106. Is it ever going to do it? And then we're going to refuse it, and then we're going to lose the housing. That's my point. I'm just not getting there's just usually there's a few more policy MPF statements that back this up, and this is about not being affordable as opposed to a refusal on policy grounds.
I know you're up next, Councillor, but I'm going to bring Amrana.
Sorry, just to go back
Legal
onto...
department.
Yeah, that's fine. Just to go back onto the policy ID 10, where it's stated that the point 2, that all typologies need to be considered from 1A to 1D, and not that 2 of them are being considered and are in surplus. So that is the difference, that we're sort of taking this approach, and we have with all the previous, whereas they're just taking 2 surplus.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Does that clarify?
That's helped
Yeah.
some.
Yeah. Councillor Clough.
Thank you, Chair. This is a really difficult one. Am I given to understand that this social housing is all rentable? Yes. This is rentable housing that we need in the district, specifically in this area. Part of the development is on a brownfield site, which we should promote above greenbelt sites. But we are, what's concerned, I have written it down, but I can't read my own writing. Part of the ground is out of scope, part of the recreation ground's out of scope. I'm saying out of scope, what I've written down is not out of scope, but that's what I'm thinking it's referring to. Is that correct?
I think, Chair, Councillor Clough's probably written out of service.
Yeah, that's probably what I've written, yes. Yeah. So what does that actually mean?
So if you look at 7.19 of the officer report, so it's been defined as out of service as part of the play space strategy, play pitch strategy, get my teeth in. So it was defined as out of service, but that doesn't mean that it can't be brought back into use. And it's still protected under the local plan as recreation land.
But we are bringing, this application will bring some of that back into service.
What the proposal is looking to do, it will replace the existing Mugger skate park and play area with new facilities in a slightly different location. So some of those facilities at the moment aren't in great order. So the new scheme, what is proposed, they will be slightly bigger and they'll be brand new, but they'll be located in a little bit different location. But there's no guarantee that we'll get the pavilion and the sports pitches. I think that's the key to the argument, really.
Yeah, I can understand that. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Any further questions for officers? Thank you for that, officers.
Sorry.
Can anybody respond at this stage? Apologies. Or is it just the council members that can respond?
Sorry, no.
That's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Chair, I've got my...
Oh, Councillor Cooper.
Adrian, I'm a bit like all the members. I'm thinking, which comes first here, cart or the horse? You know, we're trying to bridge the 2 gaps, and I'm trying to find a way forward. I don't know, as officers, if you can advise what is a way forward, possibly.
Chair, we've had the same considerations that you need to weigh up this afternoon, and Graham and Councillor Clough have discussed it quite well, in my opinion, in terms of that's the nub of the issue. You've got the benefits that would come forward with the affordable housing, which we've weighed in our assessment, and that's got to be weighed then against the disbenefits, which would be the loss of the open space. Now, if we'd have been able to come forward with a way where we could say to you that the pavilion and the sports pitches would come forward, if you were to grant permission for this scheme, then it's possible that our weighting would have been different. And that really is where our assessment as officers has been, and we've concluded as we've concluded. It's for yourselves to weigh all those issues in the balance, and where does your weighting fall? And if you were to grant permission, you'd be granting permission for the scheme as a whole, so you get the affordable housing, and there's the aspiration towards the other facilities, and you get your upgraded mugger, skate park and play area locally. But you've got to weigh whether the balance of that in your back pocket and the aspiration of the pavilion and the pitches is sufficient to outweigh your planning policy, which seeks to protect recreation open space from loss. So that is the balance. I can't make that judgment for you. That's the decision of the committee. But I think as officers, I think we've set that out for you as well as we can in the report and the discussions you've just had. Hopefully that explains it, Chair, but colleagues may have other things to say as well.
Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, following on from that, Adrian, I suppose the question is also, is it a material loss? Would there be enough recreational space left for the people in likely users? Have you a view on that as officers? Is it above average, below average, average for that type of settlement?
You've heard some discussion around the open space provision and how much is left, whether there's over provision, under provision. In discussions that we've had as officers, we believe that the balance isn't where the applicant believes it is. We believe that the resultant loss is material and would result in a deficiency. The applicant doesn't agree with that for the reasons set out, but we have set that out in the report in paragraphs, I think 7, 9 onwards, the various sizes and areas that are left and that would be lost. So we've weighed that in the balance. We don't believe that as I say, the benefits outweigh that loss, and we believe there would be a material loss of open space.
Councillor Hancock.
Thanks, Chair. Slightly different question, although similar vein. One of my concerns here, and I know we're supposed to judge every single application on its own merits, but we also know that things come back to bite us in the end. The majority of this development is proposed outside of the settlement development limit. So if we were to access, and that is a huge issue in most of the district, is the erosion of settlement development limits. And my concern is if we were to approve this application today, is that going to come back and haunt us when somebody's wanting to close a settlement development limit somewhere else, and it's like, well, you approved this one in North Wingfield, so it's not going to be upheld at appeal. So I know it's crystal ball asking, but it's kind of like, where's it going to leave us if we did approve it?
So yeah, you're right, Councillor Hancock. Yeah, about 2/3 of the houses are outside of the settlement, but the proposal should be considered against LC3, so the exceptions policy, and the scheme is 100% affordable. So we believe that it accords with that policy. So if another scheme came in, it would still have to, if it was 100%
it would give us that belt and braces bit, yeah.
You know, that would change if this scheme was maybe you know, for market housing, that would be a different argument to be having.
Thanks, Graham.
Right, thank you, members. And thanks to the officers for their clarity. This leads us to the final part of the process, our discussion on what we have heard, what we think and what we want to decide. But before going any further, I would like the clerk to remind us about motions.
I don't think, Chair, there's much more than what I've already said on this. As you well know, motion must be moved and seconded before a motion is taken. Motion must be moved, which goes against the recommendations. Then you must give the reasons for doing so. I think I'll leave it at that, Chair.
Thank you, Ellen. Right, I now open the floor for debate. Councillor Gay.
Well, I think, like most people, I mean, I'd really like to see more affordable housing, particularly social housing like this, plus, while taking the officers' points about losing the actual space, probably getting an improved recreational facility. I mean, I don't know if this is appropriate here, but could we defer this and just see if an accommodation could come to, perhaps with some market housing, you know, the involvement of parish council. It feels like it's very complicated. There's an awful lot of aspects that perhaps it would be beneficial to have a bit more time on it.
Would you like to add anything to that, Adrian? On that point?
Just in terms of the deferral, Chair, perhaps take us back a few months. We've had the application with us some time, and we have sought to unlock the scheme as officers with the developer in terms of potentially a bit more market housing to provide some receipt. I think Councillor Rennick mentioned that, I think, earlier on. We have discussed that, but of course you've heard also that the model that Guinness have is for affordable housing. So we've had that discussion. If members thought that there was some time-limited way that the scheme could be unlocked, then I think deferral may be beneficial. But as officers, we've come to the end of where we believe we can take it. So it would need a step change from one of the parties, probably, for us as officers to be able to come back to you with a positive recommendation, if I can put it like that. But of course, if you as a planning committee feel that deferral, further to discussion this afternoon, may potentially unlock the discussion, and the applicants are here, that's something, again, you will need to consider. But I can assure the planning committee that colleagues have sought where we can, or where we believe we can, on the back of your planning policies, to come up with a different mix that would mean that we could come to you and say there is all the benefits would be realised, but we've not been able to achieve that, unfortunately. So hence we've come to you with our and I can only reiterate, we've balanced all the issues that you've discussed this afternoon, and our conclusion has fallen as it is. You need to have that planning judgment, unless you feel that deferral is going to unlock something that we've missed. And again, that's a matter for yourselves, Chair.
Councillor Hancock.
Thanks, Chair. It's to pick up on Christine's point, actually, because I know obviously we've got to have something that's time limited and do it. Would it be a viable option legally, so it may be one for you this, if we were to go back to see if the parish council could actually apply for lottery funding and see if they could get an indicative answer, so we could see how viable it would and whether that would give us different waiting costs. I'll be honest, I agree with 100% of what's in the officer report. Our own policies are hanging us here. It's one we'd like to do, but if we do, then we're creating precedents. But if we could perhaps get something that's saying, yes, it's more likely to be realised, it shifts the balance a little bit.
Okay, so is your... Sorry,
Yes, I'm going to bring you in,
Sorry, is your question is if parish council can come in with sort of say, yes, we can 100% provide the funds?
Well, I don't think they'd be able to say 100% they could, but if they could give us a proper indicative...
The problem is with the Section 106 agreement, it'd be difficult to monitor, if not impossible, because we'll have issues like maintaining the trigger events and having two parties, for example, the parish council and the applicant, dependent on each other if it comes to enforcing the Section 106 agreement because of one party not delivering what they should be under Section 106 agreement. That would prove to be very, very difficult.
To be fair, though, the 106 agreement's not going to cover the cost anyway, is it? So they've got to get other funding, and that's kind of what I'm kind of inferring. If they could get an indicative answer on that, that potentially could shift the balance, because we've kind of got a bigger chance of saying, actually, there's a strong chance this could be realised.
Again, I wouldn't be able to secure that under a Section 106 agreement. I think the issue is that we can't secure it under a legal mechanism.
Right.
So.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Councillor Lacey.
Thank you, Chair. I sort of listened to each and every sort of one of you, my colleagues, and I feel that we should defer this because we've got a new MPFF coming out late this year, early next year. That might clarify things, and it might help Councillor Barker and the Parish Council get their ducks in a row.
Clarification, Chair. Without absolutely spooking our governance manager.
Can you just...
You might read it. Representation. Was it just practical, sensible if you just asked the relevant parties who are sat in the room if they would think, are we hindering or helping them to defer this? Because they might say, please don't defer it, and then we'll just know to go straight to a vote.
That's fair. Yeah, we can ask that question. Who's going to answer?
Sorry, Chair, I think that might be something which would happen outside of the committee meeting. You have at the moment a report in front of you and specific recommendations.
Can we suspend standing orders then to allow the question to be asked? I'll happily move that we do that.
Are members comfortable with that? Is there no legal reason why not? Suspend standing orders?
Just to make sure, just to clarify, what is the reason that we're deferring? Because if we're deferring on the NPPF reason, then a lot of planning applications should then. Because the issue here we have is the Section 106 agreement. There's no legal mechanism to secure the pavilion and the pitches. The typologies have not, the policy ID 10 has not been applied correctly, so they fail short of that.
It was more because it was about getting that balance of allowing a planning application to fulfil this housing need.
Your microphone.
Keep the housing. We don't want to stop the housing, and if we can stabilise the land until appropriate further investigations on the development of the recreational space. If we feel, I'm torn between that. Do we not want to stop the housing, which is needed, because of the recreational, which is if I'm honest, is a long shot. So I feel mad to refuse this, but I don't want to stop the housing. So, but if they all agree that actually we should pull it and resubmit it, get the housing sorted out in the right way, keep the land available that should be separated for recreational use, then we've got a scheme and a plan that can be worked on. Is why.
So as I understood it, Chair, then essentially what's happened, standing orders has been suspended so that the two sides can now discuss amongst themselves. Can I suggest, Chair, perhaps a sort of 10 minutes comfort break for the committee while that happens?
Yes, that's fine.
And for them to inform us of their decision.
Well, I think the committee, when it reassembles, would then hear if there was anything which either parties wish to inform you of.
So we'll reconvene at past. Yeah, okay. Thank you, members. Right, I'm going to hand you over to David Thompson, Planning Director. Thank you. Over to you, David.
Thank you, Chair. So just to summarise the discussions that we've just had, first off, really to pick up what our Hamner legal officer said before for the break around ID 10 and the issue of the MPPF consultation. So obviously we all appreciate that one of the items on the agenda has been deferred. There are technical matters to resolve. There is also the potential impact of the MPPF consultation on that scheme. But what's really important to highlight, and it's different in relation to the North Wingfield scheme, is that the significance of ID 10 and the protection of recreation space does give this application a distinct status, and the impacts of this scheme are different in that respect. And should there be a position whereby the policies in the local plan relating to housing delivery come out of date, that won't necessarily affect, well, it doesn't affect the status as recreation space. And this is going on what the current MPPF consultation is saying. So there will be a definition of those policies that become out of date if we can't demonstrate a supply. So that links to the point of what's actually going to change as a result of a deferral. Obviously, I've just had a discussion with the joint applicants, and I think it's fair to say, as has probably been conveyed in the debate, there's some sympathy for the fact that there's three different parties trying to arrange different things. One is a affordable house builder who's inevitably then not interested in being party to a pavilion and sports pitch development. So, and that's obviously linked to external funding, which will no doubt one of the first questions will be, have you got planning permission? So I think, you know, there's sympathy with the position, but the reality is, unless we can secure, as part of the Section 106 agreement, a mechanism whereby the delivery of the sports pitches and the pavilion, or some other facility, because there's been various discussions about, do you actually need a whole pavilion, or could it just be fairly basic changing rooms? They'd have to be permanent, but fairly basic to allow the use of the pitches. So something not necessarily as costly as what is being proposed at the moment. And all of those discussions haven't led anywhere. So the reality is, we feel as officers that we've exhausted all of the possibilities. We have had very much at the front of our mind the potential benefits of the affordable housing, for which there is evidence to back the need, absolutely. So that's why, you know, the three of us have spent a lot of time trying to get it to work. But the reality is, without being able to secure the sports pitches and the pavilion, we've got an objection from Sport England, we've got the issue around ID 10 and the loss of the recreation space, and it's simply, from our perspective, we weren't able to make that balance stack up positively. And those considerations would not be changed by the current consultation on the National Planning Policy Framework. Clearly, the weight to be given to a consultation is minimal. That's established in legal practice, simply because there's an opportunity for it all to change or it to never come forward. But it's about trying to manage the risks associated with decisions that you as a committee are taking. And in this respect, as officers, we've reached our conclusions, and we don't feel that there's any more risk associated than, you know, the standard process of no doubt dealing with an appeal. So I hope that's helpful, Chair.
Thank you, David. Does anybody have any questions on that? Was that clarified? Okay. Right, thank you. This leads on the final part of the process, our discussion about what we heard, what we think, and what we want to decide. But before going any, I've done that bit, haven't I? Sorry, not crossed that bit off. Sorry. Having heard everything today and the officer's recommendations before us, what is the view of the committee on the application? I am now opening the floor to motions. Councillor Hancock.
I don't like doing this, Chair, because I know we respect the officer's advice and we do the bits. I'm actually going to place personal weight, and I hope someone will back me, that the development is for alternative provision of recreation facilities, the needs of which clearly outweigh the loss. So I'm going to suggest that we reject officer recommendations, approve it. Obviously we can't put anything in 106, but I think the overall provision, I mean, it's in such a state at the minute, doing anything to it will actually make it better than where we are. So that's my motion. Someone will second it.
So second by Councillor Clough.
So the motion there, the motion there then is to approve the application contrary to officer recommendations, and that was moved by Councillor Hancock and seconded by Councillor Clough. If planning manager wish to come in on this?
Purely just to ask, Chair, that if members are minded to support that motion, that the conditions and completion of any necessary legal agreement is delegated to myself, Chair, please.
Well, on that basis, Chair, I think we could have the electronic vote if that could be set up now, please.
Everybody voted? Everybody happy with the way they voted? Right, that's 6 for the motion and 3 against and 1 abstention. Right, thank you, colleagues. That's the final application for consideration. We're now going to move on to planning appeals. I'm now going to ask the planning officer, Adrian Kirkham, to give us an update.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to ask members to note the report, which extends to the 4 pages. You can see we've still got a significant number of appeals that are lodged and are coming through the system, and you can also see we've had a significant number determined over the past period. There's been the one that was allowed, which was a small addition to a property in the countryside at Holstone Moor. But more specifically, Chair, I'd ask members to note the various appeals that have been dismissed, and particularly the consistent theme regarding inappropriate development in the Greenbelt, which relates to the vast majority of those proposals, with the exception of the applications at Swathwick Lane and Garden House at Pilsley. It is my intention, Chair, when appropriate and when the agenda is perhaps a bit lighter, to pick out some of the salient points on some of the more interesting appeals. And I know we've discussed that and you've asked me to do that, but didn't feel that this afternoon, in view of the weight of the agenda, was appropriate. But I would ask members, bearing in mind the training that we've just had, to note in particular the appeal at Garden House, which is the bottom one on page 137, which you may remember came to committee, and it was the application for the 3 supported living units at Garden House at Pilsley. And the issue I would just like to point out in respect of that is there were various issues discussed at committee, and you were spoken to by a number of speakers on the various issues. But in that instance, there was one specific issue that you refused the application on, and in her discussions on the appeal result, if you like, the appeal letter, the inspector went through all the various arguments and dismissed them with the exception of the one that you chose to nail your colours to. And I think that's just a good example of not just weighting your decisions with anything you can think of, but to really hone in on the issue that has planning merit and planning weight. And in that instance, the weight that you afforded that was overriding in the inspector's opinion, and the appeal was dismissed. But I think that's the lesson that I would take from that. But as always, Chair, I would encourage you to read all the appeal decisions as they come in. And in this instance, the consistent theme is that inappropriate development in the Greenbelt is refused and supported on appeal. And I will, in due course, Chair, when the agenda is perhaps more sympathetic to it, we'll perhaps do a session during the committee on some of the salient points that have been brought forward over the past few appeal decisions.
Okay, thank you, Adrian. Do any members have any questions? No? Thank you, members. Do we agree to note the report? Yeah. Okay. I have no urgent business I declare the meeting closed. Thanks for attending. But we do have a short briefing session after the meeting, after it's been fully closed. Okay, I don't think we need a comfort break though, because we've everybody's been, so we'll go straight into it.
Hello, Charlotte. Would you be able to close the meeting now? Thank you.
Hi, Alan. Yes, I'll close the meeting now. Thank you.
Much obliged. Thank you for that.